Now, when I think of classic house, I always think of those big kind of piano riff, kind of piano house. That's what I think of. And in this video, I want to go over how to make one of those big piano riffs. We're going to use the Korg M1, not the actual synthesizer itself, because those are quite hard to get a hold of and they cost quite a bit, but we're going to use the VST version, the plug-in version instead, to create an amazing piano line. So I'm going to dive into my plugins folder, into the Korg folder, and I'm going to pull out the M1 plugin. Now, this is a plugin I've used a lot. I've used it so much, and it's not even that expensive. If you catch it on offer, it's actually a very decent price, and you've got all those classic house sounds. So I'm going to hit browser within here. And this allows us to go through all the different patches within here, and I'm going to go into the piano category. Now, there's loads of really good patches within here that are very almost instantly recognizable. The M1 house split is this amazing way of having piano on the upper keys, and then on the lower keys you have an organ sound. I tend to use that organ sound quite a bit. We might use that in a bit later in another video. So for today, I think I'm going to go for this piano left and right. I don't know what the meaning is behind any of these patch names. I just know the ones that I've used quite a bit and that work quite well. You're free to obviously to go through any of these and see which one works for you. The Velo piano preset, for example, is a great one that I use a lot. It's very strong. I think it's just a high velocity, so really kind of in your face kind of one. Today, I don't want to go that extreme, so I'm going for this piano left and right. Double click on that to load that up. And there isn't too much within here that I really need to kind of tweak around with. I don't tend to tweak these patches much because generally when these synths first came out, all people were using were the presets that came with it, and they kind of tweak them a little bit, but mainly they're all the original presets. So if you want to get that classic sound, it is almost just using the presets. The only place within here that I do tend to tweak is going into the Master Effects tab. This is where it's loaded with effects already on it. So you've got a hall reverb within here and a chorus. I might leave the chorus on for now, but for example, the hall reverb here, I might just adjust that dry wet. Maybe just to get rid of some of that reverb or get rid of it completely and add my own reverb on. That's just one of those kind of choices that I make as I go along. So I might come back to that a little bit later, but for now, let's just keep that preset in there. And we're going to concentrate more on the actual pattern, the actual old school piano chords. And I'm going to come up with a little bit of progression. I don't want to say a proper progression because it's really going to be this repetitive dance kind of thing rather than a proper song progression. So I'm going to actually do it over 2 bars. I'm going to create a new empty MIDI clip within here. And I'm actually going to use one of the features of Ableton 11. Now, if you don't have Ableton 11, don't worry about it. You can still do this. It just makes it a little bit easier for seeing what scale you're in, because I'm going to use the scale mode within here. And this allows me to set the scale that I'm going to be working in. So I'm going to work in D sharp. Let's do D sharp today. And I'm actually going to choose the minor scale. So most dance tracks are usually in minor. You do have the odd one that is in major when you're looking for a more happier kind of track, but generally it's mostly kind of dance music is mostly kind of moody. So that's why we're keeping it in minor. And you can see obviously within here that all these kind of notes are now lighting up blue. These are all the ones that are in the scale that we want. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to build up just a general minor chord. And then I think actually might make it a minor 7th. I'll show you how to kind of change that afterwards. So I'm going to choose the root note is going to be on the D. I'm going to make sure first we're on the 16th grid. That's what we need it to be. And then I'm going to put a note on the root. And then I'm going to go up 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3. And then I'm going to go up 4 semitones from that. 1, 2, 3, 4. So we got the 0, the 3, and the 7. This gives us our basic minor chord. And what I'm going to do, just to kind of make it even a little bit more kind of soulful than that, a bit bigger, a bit kind of, I don't know, wider. Don't know what you want to say about it. I'm going to add another note in on top of that. That's going to make it the minor 7th. So I'm going to take this top note here. I'm going to go up 3 from here. So 1, 2, 3. And that now makes it a 7th. You can already hear we're getting that kind of old school kind of dance kind of feel to it. I'm going to extend this out a little bit. And now what I think I'm going to do is I'm going to do that kind of classic dance thing of using the notes almost in thirds. I'm not even sure if it's got a name, this kind of technique or this kind of pattern, but I call it kind of the rule of thirds. So rather than having the note on every beat, well, not every beat, every 16th or say, for example, I usually put a note on every 3rd, 16th, I think that is. I'll show you what I mean. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to count 1, 2, 3 over 3/16. I'm going to do exactly the same again. 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3, and then 1, 2, 3. And you get this classic kind of, this pattern is in just about, well, it's just in so many different kind of house tracks. You probably know what I'm going on about. Actually, I might move these notes down so it's down 1 octave. There we go. We're getting there. And what I'm actually going to do is I'm going to move this over so it's not quite as predictable, so it doesn't start on the 1. I'm going to actually start it on the offbeat. And then I'm also then going to, I'm going to then take this down maybe, yeah, so it's not a progression, but I'm going to take it down maybe, I don't know, a bit lower in the scale. Let's just try this anyway. There we go. That's sounding quite nice. And in fact, I might move these last 2 notes up a bit. So yeah, this is like the first starting of having like that kind of old school piano sound. And this works really nice. This is a kind of deeper kind of sound. This is like a deeper kind of piano sound. You can imagine a bass kind of bumping along with that. But I'm going to take you into the proper, almost, I wouldn't say rave kind of territory, but a more kind of upbeat piano kind of line. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to move all these notes up 1 octave again, so they're a bit higher. Actually, no, I think I'm going to keep them lower, changing my mind a little bit. And what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to now put notes to kind of balance these out. I'm going to put a root note in here. So I'm going to put a root note before here. I'm going to take it down 1 octave. And what we're going to do is we're going to go between the single note, the lower note, and then the chord. So it's going to go lower chord, lower chord, lower chord, and do this kind of bouncing almost. You'll see what I mean. Let's try it and put that one in there. And put this in here and this in there. So I'm literally just kind of copying it. Just before the chord comes in, I'm doing a note 1 octave lower. And that's the root note there. Take that down 1 octave. As you can see here, just before the chord, in fact, that goes up, doesn't it? So we're going to use that one there. And then finally on the end here. And you can even play around with these, maybe kind of moving them a little bit. And in fact, one thing I just noticed is that we don't actually have the swing on here. So I'm going to use the same swing that we used earlier, this MPC one here. So you can hear there, I had a bit of trouble kind of describing it, but you can hear that kind of balance, that jump between the two. You've got that lower note, which is the kind of almost like the bass note within this piano pattern. It's this kind of, this bass note. And then you go into the chord, which is a bit higher up. Now we could take all these notes and maybe move it up 1 octave. Definitely more of a kind of ravey kind of thing, maybe. I don't know why it's got a ravey kind of in my head, but yeah, I'm going to move it back down again. Keep it a bit deeper. And of course, you can kind of play around with these. You could even make this into a minor 9th or a minor 11th, make it even more jazzy. It's just a case of expanding it a little bit. So I'm going to take these notes here at the top, for example. And to make it a minor 9th, I'm going to take these up 4 semitones. So 1, 2, 3, 4. So you can almost hear the way that we're kind of taking it away from being that kind of ravey, dancey kind of thing. And by adding that extra note at the top, we're making it a bit more jazzier. You could even start doing inversions, but I'm not even going to get into that on this. I'm trying to keep it to just that old school house kind of sound. And really it comes from that balance between that bass piano note and then that chord, that kind of bouncing. And also with the swing, obviously you get even more of a bounce and even more of a groove. Now, to make it fit a little bit more in the mix, we've obviously got to EQ it. So I'm going to go into my audio effects. I'm going to go to the EQ8. I'm going to take quite a bit of the bottom end out because we're actually going to add a bass in to kind of match this. This obviously, the piano is not going to be our bass going throughout the track. So I'm going to take some of the bottom end away, but not too much that we're going to really kind of take away from that bottom piano note, but enough to kind of make room for the bass. And then we're also going to do some other things to make it fit in. Now it's a little bit too much of a cut. I'm just going to, soften that up a little bit. That's really kind of grooving quite nicely. And one thing that we can actually make it fit in nicer with everything else is that we can use a bit of side chaining. So it kind of ducks whenever the kick hits, and that will just make it fit in with the mix a little bit better. So let's go to Dynamics. Let's get a compressor in there. I'm going to open up the sidechain tab here, select sidechain, and then from here I'm going to select my kick. Then I'm going to decrease the threshold until we start getting some kind of pump. If I solo it with a kick, you'll kind of hear it kind of pumping. And that kind of really is the basis for it, really. I mean, we could go in there and maybe take off some of that reverb. Let's try taking a bit of that reverb off there. It will make it sound a little bit rawer. And actually, one other thing we can do, I'm just going to take the sidechain compression off just for a second. I'm going to bypass that because I kind of want to make this feel a little bit kind of old school. And a great little plugin for that is a free plugin by iZotope called Vinyl. This is a really kind of cool plugin. It's just been updated recently, which is really cool. And it almost kind of gives that instant old school sound to something. If I drop this on here, I'm going to drop it before or after the compressor. I'm going to put it after the compressor. I don't think it really matters too much in this chain. But yeah, we'll see how that goes. Maybe it will just give the compression something. Now, this is a really kind of cool interface, and up the top here, we can kind of select the year. So it's almost like it just ages the piano, and it takes it back to a different kind of era almost. You can hear a bit of crackle going in the background, and that is crackle coming from this, and it will keep going. Even though I'm not playing the actual thing at the moment, you'll hear that crackling coming through. If you don't want that in there, you can just decrease the dust, and then you're not going to get anything come through. I would, a bit later on, we're going to go through adding some kind of vinyl noise in there. So you can actually add it in with this plugin if you want to, but generally I would keep it off and then handle that vinyl stuff a little bit later on. One of the main things with this is this little wear knob. This wear knob is almost like it's almost like a filter, and it kind of rolls a bit at the top end off, and that makes it just feel a little bit more old school. And we've also got this warp here as well. You can hear the piano going, it's just kind of, it's warping like it's coming from an old vinyl. It's having a bit of, maybe a bit of problem keeping to the same speed. You can obviously increase this or decrease this as much as you want. I want it to be a little bit more subtle, so I might take it away a little bit. See, this is cool. You can just pick the different ages and you get a completely different effect. For example, you could even use this in the breakdown, for example. So It could be, you could have it on the 1970 preset within here when it's playing through. And then when you get to the breakdown, you could actually put it on the 1950 to give it that kind of, all the bottom end being taken away and it being a bit thinner. I think fundamentally all it's doing is a bit of filtering, but it is quite handy just to be able to chuck it on there and get that kind of feel. So let's hear how that all sounds together. So yeah, that's all grooving quite nicely. As I say, that vinyl just adds a little bit of grittiness to it. It takes a bit of that kind of harshness from the top end and just warms it up a little bit. And that's kind of the basics of creating that old school piano. You can obviously go in multiple different directions. You could just go with minor chords and make it sound a little bit more ravey, a little bit more old school, or add those sevenths, those ninths and the 11ths chords to kind of give it a little bit more of a soulful kind of angle. That's where I kind of lean. But you can go whichever direction you want. And that's a good basis for kind of creating those old school pianos.
Thanks everyone for watching. We really appreciate the support from you guys. If you liked this video, then smash that like button. And if you want to be notified about new content, hit the subscribe and the bell notifications. Peace!